All right, we are just a few days away from 2019, and while Iowa and New Hampshire have already announced their caucus and primary dates for 2020, it appears the large pool of potential Democratic candidates is off to a slow start in those key states. As NBC's Beth Fouie reports, even as more than 24 Democrats are considering a run for their party's nomination, no major candidate has signaled definitive plans to jump in. Diehard activists have been slow to commit to any potential contenders, and donors are keeping their checkbooks closed, at least for now. All eyes remain on the three Bs, Biden, Beto, and Bernie. Voters and potential contenders looking for any sign that they might run. NBC senior politics editor who's behind that reporting, Beth Fouie, is here in the flesh, joining us as well. Charlie Sykes, Jonathan Capehart are back with me. So, Beth, so much to talk about here. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Why are we in this dilemma? Why are the candidates not jumping at the gun to be the first out the gate and announce that they're running?
Well, on the one hand, this field is sort of like a duck. It's like seems kind of calm on the surface, but there's a lot sort of paddling going on underneath. But the difference there is, despite all that paddling, all these phone calls being made to Iowa, New Hampshire, different people thinking about running, like Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren, trying to line up staff, trying to line up donors, trying to line up sort of structural advantage in those early states. Nobody wants to jump out first and declare that they're the candidate. There's reasons for that. Because they're reluctant to sort of make themselves sort of vulnerable and a target to Trump and his tweets and his criticism, as you and I have talked about. But the other problem is what you just described, those three Bs. Right now, in absence of a clear front runner in this field, and there isn't one, the three sort of those who dominate are in the polls are Biden, Beto O'Rourke, and Bernie Sanders, because they're all very well known and because they have national profiles, fundraising profiles that go much beyond sort of a Kamala Harris or a Cory Booker.
So what is it out of those three individuals, Beto, Biden, and Bernie, what do they represent within the Democratic Party? Are any of them overlapping with one another that voters may say, hey, you two are too similar?
Yeah. So Biden is definitely, you know, he's Uncle Joe. He's that guy that everybody loves, has all sorts of affection for as a former vice president. And also we know a lot about his family history and his tragedy with the death of his son. He's just a very well-loved establishment Democrat, but who could probably suddenly, if he got into this race, become a target again. He's not going to be just Uncle Joe sort of rising above. Yeah. Bernie Sanders was the progressive hero in 2016, almost toppled Hillary Clinton. Lots and lots of folks want to see him back in, but he's 77 years old, and there may be some appetite for another progressive. Now, then there comes Beto O'Rourke. He kind of came out of nowhere, sort of flashing out of this Senate race in Texas, where he almost knocked off Ted Cruz. And the problem there with him is that's apparently, according to Democrats, is while he's a very appealing and charismatic guy and he's got tons and tons of support nationwide, a lot of people don't really know where he stands on a lot of issues. Is he a progressive? Is he more centrist? Bernie Sanders, folks around him, some of them have sort of taken their shots at him, saying he's not an authentic progressive, where all the kind of Democratic energy is right now. So it's an effort to sort of define him before he steps in and decides to run himself.
You cover politics a lot more than I do. I feel some of these points that you brought about as criticism of these individuals and their candidates, President Trump has taken those off the table. I mean, age-wise, he's up there. Inexperience-wise, he didn't have any experience. His viewpoints on some of these policy issues constantly fluctuating. It's not to say that Democrats should hold themselves to that standard, but he's broken the norms, I guess, of some of these political 100%. Rules that we used to play with.
Exactly, and I think that's why we're seeing such a big potential field of probably 30 or more, because if he can do it, why not me? That's what they're all saying.
Yeah, so to that point, Charlie, unlike other years, there doesn't seem to be an overwhelming favorite or front runner. How do you think this is going to impact who decides to run?
Well, you know, as Beth points out, I mean, Donald Trump has basically said anybody can run, but the Democrats haven't yet decided what they're really looking for. Are they looking for the solid veteran, the experienced veteran like Joe Biden? Are they looking for a fresh new face? Are they looking for the most solid progressive? And you know, it's very interesting polls. The USA Today Suffolk University poll was very interesting. The one consensus was that they do like the idea of somebody new. They don't want to see Hillary Clinton work again. There seems to be a good deal of Bernie fatigue. And I'm really curious whether or not the Democrats have an appetite for watching two, 70-year-old white guys duking it out in 2020. The one concern that they ought to have, of course, is not to prematurely create a circular firing squad, because that would be the one thing that Donald Trump would most like to see.
Yeah, Jonathan, how important is it going to be for the Democrats to field a candidate that reflects this country? And to Charlie's point, not an old white guy, and not to say old in a negative way, but certainly in an age perspective, an older white guy.
Oh, please, look. Every Democrat who wants to run should run. That's what the primary process is for. The person who comes out of that process is the person who reflects the party. What I think Democrats should do in 2020 is let them all run, support your candidate as the field winnows down, and once there is a nominee, Democrats, as an absolute imperative, must circle the wagons around that nominee and do everything possible for that person to beat President Trump in 2020. That should be the #1 overriding goal for whoever the Democratic nominee is. And whether that person is you're the one, as I call it, or not, Democrats have to put aside their traditional circular firing squad, as Charlie called it, and instead circle the wagons and support that nominee. Nothing else is more important.
And Beth, final question to you. You've been in and out of Iowa and a few others. You're talking to the voters out there. What are you getting a sense from likely Democratic voters that they're looking for? Are they looking for an issue-centric race or a personality-centric race?
They're looking for a winner. I have never seen it so wide open in that way. They don't have a particularly strong feeling about what type of candidate they want. They just want somebody who can beat Trump. The problem is that nobody knows what that means. We found that out in 2016, that he is much harder to beat than anybody thought, and look where we are now.
Yeah, the question is, do you beat Trump on the issues, or do you try to beat him with his personality and the gunslinging?
And
nobody knows.
We have a while before we can figure the answer out to that one.
Beth, Charlie, Jonathan, the check's in the mail. Thank you guys for co-anchoring with me this whole hour. I think we got our money's worth out of you guys. Appreciate it. All right.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.